Welcome to Awesome 2020, Autism Canada's yearly webinar. I am Katherine Gallagher from Peterborough, Ontario. I'm speaking today about self-advocacy and why it's important, and some things I have learned that have not helped me. I want to start out by sharing my story and what my connection to autism is. I found out I was on the spectrum in 2014 after receiving a professional diagnosis. I was referred to my local hospital after someone in my life recommended I get further testing. From there, I was diagnosed by an OHIP covered psychologist. From that time on, I began volunteering with autism organizations, and I even joined an adult social group for people on the spectrum. The social group allowed me to try new things and, most importantly, gave me a bird's eye view on autism by meeting others on the spectrum and realizing I had some similarities to others in the group. In joining this group, I learned to accept autism and its unique qualities. Aside from joining the group, I began public speaking at schools and businesses as an autism advocate. My public speaking allowed for more self expression, for which was always something I had wanted. As an adult social group member, I was eager to find new ways to make a difference. Online advocacy work was my mission. I stumbled across a web design course offered by Make a Change Canada, and I graduated at the end of 2019. By the time I graduated, I had developed my own autism self advocacy website. My website is www.spectrumexpressions.com. Around this time, and because of my searching, I had found out that Autism Canada was looking for people on the spectrum to write for the Sharing the Spectrum newsletter. I applied and I have been writing for them ever since. So by the end of 2019 into 2020, I had found most of my ways to continue on in my self advocacy work. So look out for me because I'm always on the lookout for ways to expand. What is self advocacy and why should we self advocate? Self advocacy is basically speaking up for yourself. It is not something reserved only for autistics. But in realizing my autism, I have realized that speaking up for myself is more important because it's the only way that people will get to know the real me. Self advocacy is really important to learn from a young age. I feel that not enough emphasis was put on me, especially when I was younger and in classrooms, to self advocate. We need this to be emphasized in classrooms early on. We should not have to rely on existing support systems or organizations to advocate for us. We can do it ourselves. We have the ability to do that. So all we need to do is make a plan. And one way that I have found is through setting up goal sheets. So we have this ability, and we don't have to only rely on professional advice or counseling as our only option for what we want in our life. Sometimes I have seen in my own life and in others, having people having so many supports, and I think that that takes away from their own ability to decide for themselves. Autism is a spectrum of uniqueness, but it's also a spectrum of leadership if you choose to. There are so many ways that you can advocate for yourself. One thing is requesting accommodations that you need in your job or at school. You can also voice your truth when somebody makes a generalization about autism that you disagree with. They might say autism is confusing or I don't understand autism. You could quietly say that what autism feels like from your lived experience. You could tell them how sensory overload affects you and why you do certain things. We have to speak up when somebody says or does something we don't like. Maybe you don't like it if somebody gives you a pat on the back or suddenly wants to hug you. If you are truly uncomfortable, then you need to tell the other person how you feel. You can advocate to increase awareness about bullying if that has happened to you, or talk about your own experiences with bullying. When I joined a social group, I heard many stories of bullying. And even though I had not experienced bullying myself, I heard the importance of other people to share their stories and what they felt so that others could understand. So advocacy could be choosing to get involved more about a cause you care about to increase awareness and to share your story. You can make a big impact on someone about autism without being overly aggressive. Sometimes a simple statement makes a louder impact than if you went into a long discussion about why you think the way you do. I have a phrase that I sometimes think to myself. Sometimes this phrase is that quieter movements make the loudest impact. And sometimes I found that overly aggressive personalities, sometimes people would be overly aggressive without getting to make a clear point. And that was I found it hard to be around people if they did not have a clear message about what they were wanting and what the reason was that they had to be so aggressive. So you can still do a lot just by making small impacts, and choose to take action instead of being passive. Don't stay quiet if you feel you have something to say. It does make a difference. Choosing to self advocate means that you stay genuine to yourself and others. One ways that many of us have not been advocating is by masking. Masking to me was always something I did when I felt uncomfortable going somewhere to socialize. I was so preoccupied by what people would notice or not notice about me. So I felt I had to act in opposite ways to get through those situations. Sometimes I would act very confident if I felt very awkward, or I would try and talk as much as I could if I didn't always know what to say. And that kind of helped me get through those kinds of situations. Um, but I feel that by masking, we take away those opportunities for people to get to know the real us, the real people that we are. So I have realized that also because of COVID, I do not have to mask at all, and it feels better not having to mask all the time. I think masking does serve a purpose for us when we're really in a lot of stress, and we should not abandon it altogether. But I think that if we find ways to unmask, I think that we will be happier in the long run. So by choosing to be genuine, I think that we need to sometimes take off those masks that we wear. When we mask, is kind of like going to a movie that you've bought a ticket to go and see a particular movie, and then another movie comes up on the screen, and you're very confused and disoriented because that's not the movie that you came to see. So I think that that's what happens when we mask. We give another play to people that maybe are not anticipating that. Um, so along with unmasking comes asking for advice. I found out earlier on in my autism life that just because I was confused or not always knowing what action to take, that other people might not have the right answer either. And would I really want to act out what somebody else tells me to do if that doesn't feel right? These are the kinds of questions that we should be asking ourselves more of the time. So choosing ourselves first instead of choosing others and what other people think should be the highlight for our own self-advocacy. So unmasking and not going to advice are two things that I have learned towards more self-advocacy for myself. And with masking and getting advice, we are hiding our real selves and we lose out on an opportunity to be genuine. So doing both of those things leads to empowerment. We are our own best source for answers. We know ourselves best. Another important self advocacy step is setting boundaries and saying no. I have learned this because in the beginning, I took on a lot of volunteer work so that I could get to know autism and more personally. But I found that saying yes was just getting to be too much. And the only reason I was saying yes was to find more networking opportunities so that I could do public speaking. Sometimes this would get to me because I needed to rethink what was truly important to me. Did I really want to be a lifelong member to one of these social groups, even if a new opportunity came along that would develop, provide more growth and other opportunities for me? These were two things that I thought a lot about, and these are the kinds of questions we should be dwelling upon in helping us determine what we want in our self advocacy. Um, I often would become a member sometimes to groups, and then I would realize that I was searching them out just to fulfill my own networking goals. And then when I would be asked to take on positions in these groups as a member, sometimes it never felt right because they weren't things that I wanted to do regarding my advocacy or my public speaking. So that was how I came to decide that this was not the right path of just signing up to do things just so that I could network, and then sometimes it would take me down the wrong road. So that's another area that you kind of need to dwell upon. But just in the same way, doing nothing is just as bad as not taking any action. And we need to have those options so that we can explore for ourselves and decide what we want to do. So we also have to set clear boundaries and goals. Through I often create goal lists and to-do lists. It's never been enough for me just to think that one day I will accomplish something. I need to actually have the things written down and check in all the time and see where I am with that. And I think that we all need to do this. I think that really helps with our lives and what we are trying to accomplish. So sometimes moving on to new opportunities is something that I've also had to do in my life. If I feel that I've outgrown, whether it be a group or a volunteer position or a job or anything, if I feel I've outgrown it, and if I feel something, is coming up ahead for me that could lead to more opportunities, then sometimes I think it's best to leave those things behind. Um, Sometimes I am like if I would be working with an employment counselor and maybe the employment counselor, had a certain job in mind for me, but I knew that that was not something I would be comfortable doing, even though I had discussed my autism with them. Sometimes things like that would come along, and I wouldn't feel like it was the right match for me, or maybe I could be working with somebody who understood me more. So there are things like that that we can think about as well. Um, so there are a lot of results when you do self-advocate and you do commit to self-advocacy. And there are a lot of results that I have seen in myself. Sometimes by sharing your truth about your lived experience, you will inspire other people, and they will come forward and tell you, you made a big difference, or what you said online really helped me, or I love how you explained that. It made such a big difference for me. Another thing is I learned to see what lies beneath with other people. Sometimes in my life, I have disclosed to them, and I've been able to see their real attitudes about disability or about autism, or sometimes you might even see disbelief or shock in them because they don't believe what you're telling them. Um, but I find that by continuing and staying firm in your own communication with them. That way you don't get persuaded into thinking otherwise about yourself. Then also I find that the more self-advocating I do, the easier it becomes, and I lose any fear I have of what people may think of me. Um, I am happier and I'm more fulfilled living in a way that people get to know the real me. It builds trust because of choosing genuineness over hiding. Um, I feel better speaking about my own lived experience because when someone questions me, I feel much more sincere in being honest with them. And because of self-advocacy, I have become aware of all the times when I did not speak up for myself and I could have said more and I chose to be passive and to not get involved. So it's made me into a very aware of how I interact with people. Um, Self-advocacy teaches us the need to create goal sheets and to-do lists and to check in with those goal lists and find out what accommodations we need. Um, I have realized that by self-advocating, I am helping others to become aware that they too may have lacked self-advocacy, and it sparks their own interest. So you're creating a lot of effect on others. Through self-advocacy, I don't see autism anymore as just a medical condition. I used to see it that way at the beginning, Now I don't see it at all like that. I see it as, we're just very unique individuals, and some of us need more accommodations than others, but it's nothing, that's terrible that you can't work with. Um, self-advocacy it changes your perspective on things because you're living it, and that's the thing is we change what maybe at the beginning what we saw before. We don't see things the same way that we did before. Um, so I have found that not being overly aggressive is what has really helped me in my self-advocacy work. Sometimes in the past, through my volunteering, I had met people that were quite aggressive in their approach to communicating with others, and that just never fit well with me. I always felt, I can make a strong impact, but I don't have to, bite the other person's ear off. I can say something very calmly, and people will still understand me and still want to work with me. So that's my big message today is you might be somebody who is very aggressive, and maybe you find that that does work for you and you get your needs met. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you aren't aggressive, there's still a lot that you can do for yourself. And especially with communicating with others, it does not have to set you back. You can just be very honest with them, but not feel that you have to be overly aggressive. That's my main message today. And self advocacy is important in realizing that you do not always need someone to decide for you. You can decide right now what you want to do, and that's the whole message of self advocacy. Um, so so we are our own content experts because we live every day with autism. We know what works for us and what doesn't work for us. So we don't always have to search. For a long time, I always was searching outside of myself, like to find answers or just information. And there's nothing wrong with Googling, but if you always feel that you have to be looking, sometimes you come to a realization that you have the answers within yourself. You don't have to always be looking. So my conclusion today is you can become the best director for your life. You are in charge, and only you can see what will work. You may not always feel that you need to hire an extra assistant director for your life. Um, and going to others or to services to support you can sometimes invalidate you if it's not the right match for you. But in looking and trying to figure things out, you get to decide. So nothing is off limits, and we really need space to decide for ourselves what we want. So thank you very much for listening to my talk today. Again, you can reach me at my website, www.spectrumexpressions.com. I hope you can see now why it is such an important issue, and I encourage you all to get out and self advocate.